Welcome. Welcome to the Fortress for this afternoon's presentation on building and managing esports teams. We have a great panel joining us today. I'm Erin Charlton. I teach in the Sports Media and Marketing Department. And I'd like to welcome first Matt Burns Potthoff. Shawn Smith is joining us today as well. And last but not least, Jameson Durall. You have quite the fan club. Did you guys stack the front row up here?
We feel love. It's good.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. You had an introduction, but I would love to let you introduce yourselves as well. Give the audience a little bit more information about you.
Cool. My name's Matthew Potthoff. I'm the general manager at United. I'm responsible for team and player acquisitions. I look over our players as their manager, and I also look over our coaching department.
Hi, I'm Shawn Smith. I'm one of the founding partners of GeoScore. We do data analytics for esports, and we help develop esports programs at the team and league levels.
Hi, I'm Jameson Durall, Full Sail grad from 2001, about 20 years in game design and development, and most recently now the director of esports operations here at Full Sail Armada.
Woo. So our biggest topic today obviously is going to be building esports teams. Let's start from the management level because you guys obviously have been there, are there right now. Very general question, what are some good qualities of a manager that you both have, and how do you leverage those qualities then to start creating a good team?
Being a good manager is just being a people person, understanding your players, understanding their needs, looking out for them on personal issues, just being relatable, and most importantly, just continuing to make sure that you're always looking out for their best interest.
Yeah, I think with any leadership, it's about like enabling your people to do the best at the thing they're trying to do. And specifically with esports, we play 10 titles here at Full Sail, and I am not an expert in any of those titles. I would not call myself an expert. But what I am an expert in is, enabling people and, trying to find it, because each team is different. They have different needs. They have different ways they communicate with each other, different ways that they need to kind of, interact, and identifying those and trying to allow them to do that the way they need to.
That's great. I'm going to come back to that question as well. So a little bit more specifically then, what do you do as a team manager other than manage those personalities?
As a team manager, just day-to-day responsibilities in my eyes is identifying the cracks that can lead to emergency situations later on. I'm just always trying to look at it from a bird's eye view and making sure that our coach is doing the right job, making sure that the players are putting in the extra time to make sure that the team succeeds, noticing if any travel conflictions happen, managing sponsor relations to make sure that we're engaging the players at the right time so it doesn't interfere with their practice or schedule. You're just always looking out for the player and making sure that their only focus is on the game, and you're taking all those responsibilities to help them out.
Yeah, we try to do the same thing here. We have a few extra things we have to deal with because anyone that attends here has a very intense schedule, right? So on top of just the needs they have, in being a team and kind of competing at a high level, we have to do things like, how do we get 8 players together that could have vastly different schedules every week? How do we find that time to do that? And then when we're building teams, we've got other things we have to consider too, like we have minimum GPA requirements and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into kind of putting the teams together and then enabling them to kind of continue what they need to do.
So how do you balance that? How do you balance starting with you at the collegiate level? How do you balance 8 different schedules or 4 different schedules and work in practice times? And
I work all the time, really. And it's funny too because Discord is always available, so I'll get messages all the time. And so, but like, since we do everything monthly here, every month I'm having to like grab everybody's schedules, and luckily the university has given me the access to their schedules, so I can pull that stuff together, see when those gaps are in breaks for them, so we can try to put those teams together. And oh, hey, I'm back. And, but it's a constant thing. We're just every month we're having to try and figure that stuff out and find the best times. And then some games it's like for instance with Call of Duty, those guys talk about how there's specific times when other teams are available to scrimmage. So we want to try and see if we can organize those times together, so then they can have access to that. And that's the same for all teams, but it's all different when those availabilities are.
Do you have some of those same challenges on a professional level, just not college schedules, but similar?
Yeah, fortunately, I don't have to keep track of their GPAs. That would be insanely stressful. But yes, we're always looking out where other teams are scrimming. I really rely on my coaches. I feel coaches are one of the major aspects of a succeeding organization. They're the ones that are with the team through morning, through afternoon, through the night. They're feeding me information to relate to our ownership group on what's working, what isn't. If there's anything that, they have to be super transparent. Like there's very uncomfortable situations that they may have to bring up to me, but it's in the best interest of the team that we know what's going on so we can help the players and making sure that they're doing their job. Jameson's looking over 8 teams. I'm currently looking over 6. And just having that daily information being fed to the top is extremely important, because you obviously can't put yourself in 6 different scrim rooms. I try to sit in on our daily scrims. Like one time I'll sit in with Rainbow Six on Mondays maybe, and then I'll go with Rocket League on Tuesdays, and then I'll catch up with other teams throughout the week. So it's really just spreading your time, and sometimes you might even apply more of your time to a team that's struggling just so you can help them rebound and get ready for their big matches.
So you have a team that helps you out as well, coaches for sure. Do you guys both rely on other people within the organization, you said, to bring you back information to help you do your job better?
Yeah, I think it's just like an overall team effort. At E United, we really rely on each other. We're in constant talks with, we have a dual management system. So myself and Dan Clerkey are our GMs, and then Adam Stein and Jamie DeClino are our ownership group. And we have a really strong connection where we're always talking about things and bringing different perspectives and opinions to making sure that we're making the most calculated decision and not just having a gung-ho decision where one of us is coming to the table and trying to make a move right away.
Yeah, for us, we have a small team, but everybody has very specific roles and duties. So I don't have to worry about things outside of. I can focus on the teams. Me and Hoyt focus very directly with the teams in the community, and that's our job. So that's what we get to do, and it takes a lot of time, but we don't have to worry about things outside of that, which is really nice and allows us to do that. And then we don't yet have the ability to have full-time paid coaches. So what we're doing is a couple of things there. Whenever we can, we have we have student captains for each of the teams, which kind of help inform us, because we can't have our eyes on every team all the time, right? So talk to us about things that are happening within the team, things we need to look at, and then also we have staff and faculty that volunteer their time to be a coach or things like that as well. Help us out.
So let's talk about information you can get from outside the team. Shawn, that's where you come in with your data systems. Can you tell us a little bit about how you create and collate that data, and then how it would translate to these guys as managers?
Yeah, so I'm not a manager, but what I'm doing is I'm working behind the scenes to help make these guys' job a lot easier. So we're using the data and analytics that come directly from the games, stats APIs, things like that, in order to create tools that can allow for a coach to set benchmarks for their players and begin to track that progress over time. For a lot of teams, it's really difficult to know whether or not a player is improving unless you're watching every single video, and that takes a lot of time. So what we're doing is we're capturing the data directly from the gameplay, we're looking at the stats, and we're looking for trends. So that way we can establish, all right, is this player playing too aggressively, not aggressively enough? Well, if we've got that baseline statistic that says, let's say they're at a 500 average, and the coach decides, well, we need you to be more aggressive, now we've got that baseline to start from, and we can keep track. So over the next series of practices, does that number go up? Does that number go down? That's not going to replace coaches, of course, because the coaches still need to analyze why that number went up and down. But importantly, it gives them a baseline to start from, because right now, all they have is their gut and their instinct. And I think that with data, we can give them more tools so that they feel even more confident about their decisions.
Do you guys rely on that data as well as
extremely? It's super important. I'm more of an instinct manager. I don't really rely on data, but a ton of others do. And especially when you're trying to create good conversations around why a player shouldn't do this or should do that, that data just instantly, reinforces and validates why they should be doing that. And to your point on watching over VODs, we're watching over mistakes, but being able to pull that in with the data and save time is a tremendous benefit for teams and organizations too.
Do you guys use that here then at Full Sail?
We're starting to, yeah, and we've been partnering for several months now with this, and it's one of those things where, like I said before, I'm not an expert on all, and I don't think I could reasonably be an expert in all of these games. So having that kind of stuff where I can set benchmarks and have an idea of like quickly analyzing kind of what that progression looks like is super valuable and something we're trying to start integrating in on a daily basis.
So when you're starting to build a team with these players, where do you start? How do you get your players? How do you, like you said, if you're not an expert at every level, do you go to data? Do you go to the industry?
I guess some different entry points is, for example, Rocket League. There was one unsigned team in the RLCS. They were obviously very great players, and they just needed an organization to back them up. So that was a very easy entry point for us to get into Rocket League. When we were looking at Call of Duty, there was only so many, different players that were available, and especially since I came from COD, I understand like who's good, who's bad, who's gonna try to do the most damage at an event, and then slowly, if teams are underperforming, you're just trying to find the right niches and the right replacements to make sure that they're playing at a top level.
Yeah, it's a little different for us. So universities are traditionally starting to recruit and things like that. We're taking a different approach because we have such a huge player base here already. So Armada and our gaming community has been around for a while, and so the first step we take for any title that we're thinking about is what is the community involvement of it, and when we have our monthly club gatherings, we're like, what games are people saying, hey, let's get together and play this, and are we seeing kind of that repeat enthusiasm about a game? And then we look to see, is there a landscape for that game at all in the collegiate space? Is it being played somewhere that we could jump in with a team? And then from that point, we say, okay, we feel like there's a good pulse here. We hold tryouts, and we tell everybody about it. And, and everybody comes out, shows us, what their skill level is. And then I take all that information based on what I saw, look up things like GPAs and that kind of stuff, and then try to build the best team I can around the people that we have. And then as the teams get formed, now we get people coming up and saying, hey, I didn't know that you had a team. When's the next tryout? And for us, it's interesting because every month we have players graduating and players entering the school. So we kind of have to always be monitoring and being like, is there new talent that deserves a spot on this team? Or we're about to lose a player. We need to hold an emergency tryout to fill that spot. And for us, we kind of have two major seasons, usually a spring and a fall. So in between those, we try to figure out like, okay, here's where we're going to make those adjustments. Let's get the word out that we need to fill some spots, and then we can kind of go from there.
I'd actually like to answer that from the player's perspective for just a moment, because one thing that happens is if you are a player looking to be recruited in this landscape, there's 20 million people playing League of Legends, so it's very hard to try and look for players when there's such a big potential player pool. That's why you as a player have to go out and put yourself out there, put your profile out, get a Twitch stream going, make sure that your social media is up to date, and make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to be recruited, because if you are just playing the game at a very high level and you're a master, a grandmaster, but you're not doing anything else, you still probably won't get discovered, because there's another master or grandmaster out there that is doing those things, and that's going to be the low-hanging fruit for these guys. That's one of the things that we do with our platform is we allow players to sign up and essentially raise their hand in the air and say, pick me, pick me. And then you can look at the stats for the players, you can take a look at the other intangibles, and then that makes the recruiter's job a lot easier, because instead of recruiting from a pool of 20 million, you're recruiting from a pool of thousands that are dedicated to being discovered.
So do you help the players then, in addition to collating the data and kind of raising their hand, do you take it a step further with colleges? Because you've helped 200 or more players get college scholarships.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we do is once you're part of our directory, we go out and we actively find partner schools and partner organizations. We found Full Sail, for example, and we make sure that they understand this is a list of up-and-coming players. They're all over the spectrum as far as their ranks, but we know that they're dedicated enough that they've taken this effort to create this profile and begin to try and generate a substantial, history for themselves. So the more you can do to self-promote, the more likely you're going to catch the eye of that recruiter at the right time.
So that leads me to my next question. Data, talent, but there's more to putting a team together than just that, right? Because you have to go back and juggle personalities. Really broad question, but how do you do that? What else do you look at when you're recruiting a player outside the tryouts or outside the data or outside just being good?
I think recruiting in general, you're taking all those into accountability. You're looking at their skill level. You're looking at their personality. You're looking if they stop communicating if things get really bad. And that all justifies like the identity of the team and what's really going to happen. So if I have, for example, I have like 3 different philosophies when it comes to communications or so with different teams. You have like a robot team where they don't get very high, but they also don't get very low when things are going bad. They just try to consistently talk and have a good rhythm of communication, and that's really important that it's always consistent with one another, so they're constantly hearing very important call-outs on the map. Then you have like the crazy, like eager team where they live off of hype. Like they make a big play, they're getting in your face, they're letting their teammates know that they're making a good play, and it's very energy dependent. But sometimes those teams also are very unkeen to losing. Like when things are going bad, you can tell in their emotions that they're not talking the same, and then that in return affects the team. And then you have like a hybrid. So looking at different players and stuff, I'm always trying to justify like what's going to work in our system. Having 6 different teams, all of those teams speak to each other differently. Some are built on energy, some are built on just making clean, consistent call-outs. So you're always trying to justify if that team needs a little bit more like energy, positive awareness, and that's also where a coach comes into play too. If you need like an emotional coach, if you need someone to focus on data analytics, or if you just need someone that can be like not like a good parent, but just be like a good overseer of the guys and making sure that they're looking out of their best interest.
Yeah, so over the last 20 years in game development, I was doing a lot of hiring, and when you're hiring for creative endeavors, personality meshing is very important, right? So there was a lot of, my favorite thing to do is the lunch interview, because I don't want to talk about technical skills. I want to see like how you fit, and like kind of what your personality is like. And there's a lot of that with this as well. And as we're forming the teams initially, it's a little tougher to kind of get that pulse because you're seeing so many different people. It's hard to see them all interact together yet. We've been lucky that a lot of our players have friends on the team, so we get to see them interact with each other and then kind of see how those relationships form. But what you start to see then is you see gaps. You see a personality type that's missing from the group, and things. And so then, as you start to make changes, you start to look for people that either on the team that aren't being vocal enough that can help, kind of help in those areas, or you try to find players that have that type of personality to come in and kind of even things out a bit. But it's interesting because it's something that you have to always kind of keep a pulse on, and especially as much as we rotate through potential players, we're having to think about that kind of stuff a lot.
Yeah, and to echo on that a little bit, I guess looking at it from the other side, you're also looking at how to keep your team together and how to not have to recruit a player and making sure that the team is looking out for one another and taking time out of their day to connect and making sure that they're doing everything in their power to make sure that the team is succeeding. And it's really important to put that atmosphere above them, that they are doing everything in their power to make it work and not going for a quick fix, whether that's watching film with each other after matches, whether that's maybe playing a second side game where they can connect in a positive environment outside of these like hectic Army call-outs every single day where it's very professional, very intense, and just being able to play like Hearthstone or another game that's kind of like laid back and they can connect in other ways and talk about stuff in their personal life. That's always really important.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll add to that too is don't be toxic. The one thing that happens, anytime that I talk to recruiters and coaches about the data that we use, they talk about how important it is that they have that stats data, but immediately the next thing they talk about is what's that personality. So can we use data to detect how toxic of a player you are, if you tilt, if you lose composure? And there are indicators that we can see some of that, but at the end of the day, we've got more players that have been recruited at gold and platinum levels than we do at masters and grandmasters levels. That's because there's a lot of teams out there that are perfectly content taking a player that may be a little less skilled, but they've shown that they want to play as a team. They've shown that they're coachable. They've shown that they are willing to take direction. So you could be the best player sitting in this room, and you still might not get recruited if somebody watches your Twitch videos and they see you screaming obscenities at your teammates and walking off the map because you're losing and things like that. So your personality is just as important as your skills.
The other thing that we talk a lot about is trying to build the awareness that every player is a representative of this university and of the team, right? So I've learned a lot over the last few months about that, and so now I dig deeper into their social media backgrounds and looking at all that stuff to just make sure that there's not any red flags there, that things that, because we are a much bigger organization as a whole than just, our teams and our esports. So we have to always be thinking about representing, our family and everything that we do, and that everything we put out there is a part of that.
Yeah, and I can say after probably going through 60 different roster changes in the past 4 years throughout our teams, it's just a part of esports and sports in general. But one of the topic that always comes up is that player toxic? Like, how are they going to react when shit hits the fan, I guess, excuse my language, but that's what happens. Like, if that player can't adapt, if they can't just have a clean attitude and not let their emotions get the best of them, it ruins their career. There's a lot of players right now that are struggling to find a team, regardless if they're the best player in their category, because their attitude sucks. And then that translates to their engagement on social media. That translates to their streaming numbers if they're trying to fall back after not making money in a competitive era. So just keep in mind that if you do get the opportunity to manage or coach or even play, your attitude is really important.
And some of y'all need to change your gamer tag handles. You know who you are, all right? Some of you guys need to change it, make it a little more professional. I've seen some scouting reports where I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to put them on my front page.
So we used to say, watch your email address. Then it was watch your Twitter handle. Now it's watch your gamer tag, because brand is everything, right? And somebody's always watching. So the key words are teamwork, coachability, attitude, patience, and personality. And you answered my question about the toxicity. So what do we do in practice? Has got to be a high stress situation, especially with some games. How do you handle a practice schedule outside obviously juggling the numbers and juggling the schedules? How do you determine how often you practice? How often you take breaks? What do you do between practices?
So usually most of our teams, I should say all of our teams, they play 6 days out of the week. I always try to mandate at least one day that they're taking off. Esports professionals are burning themselves out right now. Time is really against them because you have new 17 and 18-year-olds coming up. Right out of high school, they have 12 or 13 hours to play. And then when you start hitting into your 20s, you start focusing on other things. You're still putting in the time, but 8 hours isn't enough. These guys are putting in a catastrophic amount of time to stay at the top and making sure that they're clean and they're aware and their game sense is on another level. So you're really just trying to figure that all out. Yeah.
So are you seeing burnout now with all of that?
I burned out.
Did you burn out?
It got to a point where I was traveling and I almost didn't even want to play anymore. It just got so busy, so catastrophic, where the time to play at that level, it becomes exhausting. Your sleeping schedule can be terrible, but thankfully, over the past 2 years, we're finally taking steps to get players in facilities, get them on a normal sleeping schedule, create more team environments, whether it's going out for dinner, going out for a sporting event, just trying to get their heads off of the game so they can relax and play.
What about you? Because you obviously have our schedules to juggle as well.
Yeah, our problem is actually the opposite, I think, and because when you're here, your education comes first, right? That has to be what you are, focusing on. Like I said, that's why we have things like minimum GPA requirements, so we make sure that the students are focusing on that. Coupled with those intense schedules where at least 40 hours a week you're in class plus homework and all of that stuff. So we try to take the approach of let's get them together at least once a week, right? So we have a practice facility where, like, every team, we want you to have that time. We've got 2 to 4 hours where you guys see each other because they're all in different degree programs, so we want to make sure they get as much face-to-face time as possible. But I also have 10 teams that I have to schedule around all of that, so doing more than once a week is a little difficult right now. But we want to make sure they're seeing each other, and then on top of that, we encourage them play together. Spend your evenings when you're going to be playing anyway. You love this game, you're already going to be playing it. Try to play together. Find scrims, do that kind of stuff, and get as much practice outside of here as you can, with the understanding that you still need to get your rest, you need to be healthy, you need to take care of your schoolwork.
So how do you find those opportunities for players to practice for scrims and leagues, et cetera? Is that something you guys can just kind of pick up and play together, or do you go out and scrimmage other teams?
Yeah, our coaches are in charge of scheduling scrims with other coaches, and we usually try to do 2 a day. And I guess to echo another point from the previous questions, if my guys aren't applying 100% and trying to replicate like a second nature, like professional environment as if they were playing at a tournament stage, you get to that third scrim at night and you can tell that their call-outs are a little slow, or they're just not fully into it. I usually just recommend completely cutting the practice, because at that point you're not learning anything. But yeah, usually 2 scrims per day.
You practice how you play, right?
Yeah, of course. And, before that as well, we're doing film sessions. We're watching film probably an hour or 2 before. Then you have your 2 scrims. And it's really important that you're trying to set an agenda for the day. You just want to have one goal of the day. There's 31 days in a month sometimes. So if you can accomplish one of those goals per day, you're striving to get better as a team, and you're accomplishing 31 things that maybe another team, if they're fooling around in scrims and they're just not taking scrim serious, you're getting ahead of the curve, and you're eventually going to beat them because your practice is that much better than them.
Yeah, one of the major differences is teams play differently when they're competing than they do when they're practicing, right? And so one of the reasons I like to get them in the space together is so that's their environment. We play our matches here as much as possible. We practice here. But it's funny, like, the good news is most of them, when they're off practicing on their own, they stream. And I'm in a lot of their streams. I don't know if they know that or not. I'm in your streams. All right. But the way they talk to each other is very different. Like, they're much more laid back. Like, they're still calling out and things, but it's a little more lighthearted, and they're not as serious, which is fine, but it's different, right? And so it's a different mentality, and you're not practicing how you play, right? So talking about that kind of stuff and making sure they're taking it seriously is important, and then setting up scrimmages that emulate the kind of gameplay, because, like, if you're playing public matches, you've got a mix of people that aren't necessarily a cohesive unit that you're playing against, and the strategies they use will be different than what you're accustomed to in regular league play. So it might adjust the way you play in a negative way instead of enhancing the way you should be playing.
Shawn, are you guys involved at all from your perspective in helping people who are maybe up and coming find scrims and leagues to play in on an individual basis?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're working on is, we talked about individual data, but what we're working on is now taking that individual data in order to create a team composite score that represents the collective strength of the team. Because one thing that can lead to burnout is if you've got a team and maybe you're dedicated, but you're not the best players yet, if you schedule a bunch of scrims against teams that are way better than you, then you're just going to get stomped and feel disheartened and not really get a whole lot out of that. Sometimes you could have a team that's so good that it'll actually teach you negative strategies and things like that, because you're just getting steamrolled. So we're trying to create strength of schedule analysis tools that allow you to look at another team and just eyeball and say, will this be a good match? As long as it's going to be a good match, we encourage you to try to find teams that are better than you, but there's a certain level that it stops being helpful. So that's one of the things that we're working on, and probably within the next few months we'll be able to start having a scrim tool that will allow you to look up teams based on their overall strengths.
That's really fascinating how you can use data in so many different ways to help these guys get better at what they do. So I guess one of the big questions is always money, time and money, right? So you talked about time and balancing your time and using that time wisely. How do esports teams make money? Probably less of an issue here for you guys making money, but we have sponsorships I know. So it's a different, certainly on a collegiate level here in esports. Obviously with pros, that's one of your big factors.
Yeah, I'd say the three revenue models around professional esports organizations at the moment is sponsorships, merchandise, and then digital game items. So in Rocket League, we currently have a decal where people can purchase an E-United decal with our wheels, and it's awesome. Like it's just fascinating to see your branding associated with inside of the game. It's insane to me that that's even an option for a lot of esports organizations. It's very exciting to be a part of projects like that. And then sponsorships, we work with multiple different partners, creating documentaries, short skits, advertisement, lifestyle shoots. We have a full arsenal of a creative team that's accomplishing all of those obligations and deliverables for those partners. And not to go on too off of a side topic, but I'm almost viewing like esports organizations as a creative agency too, because we're doing so much on the back end. We're handling those contracts, we're coming up with those ideas, we're pushing it out on social media and having our players interact and engage with it. So it's really exciting times in esports at the moment.
Yeah, for us it's a little different. Full Sail tends to work with partnerships, right? So we're generally not looking for just bring us income for sponsorship. It's more of like, hey, you sponsor this event, sponsor our team. Like our equipment, our practice space, and what we use here in the Fortress is, part of a partnership with MSI and with DX Racer and with Logitech. So, they provide us equipment, and we brand them, and we get that beneficial, mutual relationship out of that kind of thing. Luckily for us, we're not like looking at a revenue model for esports right now. Like we've got the support of the school. We're doing the things we need to do to put in our infrastructure and put in, build good teams, build good processes, and then, just basically be the best that we can with this and get all that stuff in place.
Yeah, and if you're out there building a team, we said this earlier, and I want to reemphasize this, brand is everything. So on our site, we work with a lot of startup teams, so teams that are just getting going. Maybe they've got a couple of good players, they've won a couple of online tournaments, and that's awesome. But whenever you send me a resume or a sponsorship request and the line literally just says, "Will you sponsor me?" Who are you? What am I sponsoring? What do I get for that sponsorship? So you have to think about what value you would get if you were to sponsor your team. And you need to go ahead and put that up front. And you need to say, and be prepared to say, we've got this many Twitch followers. We've got this cool website that we've set up. We've got these social media links. You've got to put yourself out there, and you got to put yourself out there in a very professional way. In business, it's fake it till you make it. So you've got the opportunity to make yourself appear bigger than you are, and just by going through that motion, you're going to actually get more interest. You can't just expect that sending 1,000 random emails, you're going to get any bites. You've got to put some real effort and thought into your team and into your brand.
You've got to be proactive to stand out and sell that story. And you guys have had some great stories on your website with just the video content you've created too.
Yeah, they've done an exceptional job. John DeHart, Will, Ryan, Isaac, everybody. We have Paul, who we just picked up. He's from Florida, actually. And, these guys work really hard. They travel. We just try to create a narrative and really just storytell through the highs and the lows of all of our teams, and just try to capture that energy and the emotions of our players. Even if they don't want the camera in front of their face, it's actually painful to watch our players lose, but at the same time our videographers are trying to sneak and get that shot without them realizing it, because as soon as they see the camera, they're like, get out of here. But that's slowly changing. I think it's becoming just an industry standard that this is an entertainment industry. People are interested in the drama, they're interested on how people react to certain situations, and that just comes with the business now.
So maybe to tie it all together before we take questions from the audience, how do you get your team to buy in to your level of success? Because success isn't necessarily always winning. You have other goals, as you said, a goal a day, but how do you get them to buy into what you need them to do?
Fortunately for me, being a former Call of Duty professional, I've been able to just relate to my guys a lot. It's really easy to talk to players when they understand that I've been in their shoes. I understand their grind, their intentions, and where they're trying to be. So for me, it's just an instant gratification. Like I'm able to get into their head and really get them to buy in on what we're all about. And we've won, numerous championships across Smite, across Call of Duty, Battle Right. Sam Sora's won a Super Smash tournament last year, so we're able to validate like what we're actually doing from a management structure down is working. And if they're willing to buy into our process and buy into this vision that we can take them from here to a championship caliber team, that's really what's been able to help set us apart from a lot of other organizations.
I think we're lucky here in that everybody that's coming up to try out for these teams and play on these rosters they're already excited about the game that they're playing and the ability to compete, nationally at that title with us. And I think it ultimately just goes back to, the being a leader and identifying problems, helping, when there are issues, kind of helping them, work through those as quickly as possible and making sure there's not things that are getting in the way of them being a cohesive unit and enjoying the experience. We've also got things where sometimes, our students will have a really tough month academically. They've got 2 really difficult classes and, I've had some come to me and be like, hey, can I step back to a reserve role this month because I'm really busy. And those are kind of things that we have to yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that. One, is there something we can do to help you with that? Is there some support you need to help on the education side? But if you need to step back for a second, totally cool. That's why we have reserve players. If you feel like you need to step away for an even longer period of time, let's talk about that. We don't want it to be a stress to anyone. We want them to enjoy it. And we want to make sure that the personalities are clicking and that people are have the best chance of success with that kind of thing.
How do you juggle the number of players you have on your roster? Are you talking about reserves and potentially students who do need a break? Do you have that kind of in the back of your mind where you have players that maybe can play multiple games or they can step in if they're needed?
We tend to not do multiple games, but what we do is, so each of the leagues that we play in has roster requirements. So, for instance, our Call of Duty team, we have 5 starters, and you can have 3 reserve players on the roster. But that also, just recently, I've been thinking about the fact that I want to add 2 more kind of practice squad players so we can do full 5v5s in practice, and those are the kind of things that I'm learning as we go, where I'm like, I take this information from the league as a good starting point, and as we're building the program itself, like, okay, I'm identifying other things that we need to do, so constantly changing in that way.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success working with younger talent and trying to groom them into being on the professional team. If there's a emergency situation or a family member passes away and someone has to go away, it's just always nice to have a backup. But normally we don't have a substitute unless it's mandated by the league. Sometimes it can cause a little bit of friction between the players and thinking that their spot's always on the line, which is also helpful. But yeah, outside of having that remedy of being successful and creating like a cadet system across most of our teams, it's nice to have one.
So we have a lot of students obviously here and watching. If a student isn't necessarily a gamer, but they're looking to get into esports as a career, we've talked about it's a creative industry, it's a data-driven industry. What are some of the ways that a student could either channel their education or just look for opportunities? What should they look for?
Every degree program we have here can touch on esports in some way. And that's something where, just sitting in this room, we've got all the graphics on the walls for everything that's, esports branded. We've got the whole show production, live events, all of that stuff touches on it in some way. If you're into game development at all, you could focus on, working on esports titles or the parts of it that are, necessary for the esports development. So everything here, there's an avenue for it. And if you want to talk about it specifically, grab me and we can, talk about that individually for you.
I would say that the most important thing for you to do is to do it. A lot of you are maybe sitting in here thinking, I wanted to start an esports team. I've thought about it for a while. I know some friends that I would recruit, and you're putting it off. Do it. It doesn't matter if you don't find success in the first month, doesn't matter if you don't find success in the first year. Doing it is the best teacher that you can get in a lot of ways. go through the struggles of starting up a team. What does it mean to think about my brand? What does it mean to think about my logo? All of these lessons are great lessons that are going to carry on not just into esports, but even if ultimately esports doesn't work out for you, it carries on into traditional careers as well. If you set up and run a stream for your esports team, that's great experience for a marketing company later that really wants to get into streaming. So if you're sitting there feeling like, I feel like I'm stuck and I don't know how to get started, the best thing to do is just to give it a shot. You don't have to find a bunch of grandmasters. You can start a team with your golds, and you can find leagues that are appropriately skilled for you. Give it a shot. But if you never take that attempt, then you're never going to get the lessons that come with making that attempt.
I'll try to answer this from a few different perspectives. One is a pro player. If you're aspiring to be a pro, it's a grind. You're going to be making sacrifices. You might be missing family events, including Thanksgiving and other events that are, played during those holidays, because it's attractive for kids to be able to have those 3 or 4 day weekends to get to the event. So just be in it. Like, it's a grind, and even if you don't see the results that you want to see, just go back home, get on your Xbox, PlayStation, PC, whatever game you're playing, and continue to play with the mindset that you're going to continue to get better. Put that failure as a result of learning, and not as it steeping that you're never going to get to where you want to be. From a graphic design, video, social media perspective, more than half of our hires at eUnited have been from individuals showing interest on social media. They're creating graphics, they're creating motion storyboards, they're showing that they really care about eUnited and what we're trying to do. And when we're having conversations on the back end, if there's a graphic designer that can't put that much time into eUnited, or they're struggling because something is happening, just having those options where it's like, we're going to go instantly to someone that has already showed interest in their work on social media, compared to just going out and starting that process all over again. So I'd always recommend to be professionally consistent. You don't want to be annoying. No one likes somebody that is just spamming them, but someone likes somebody that is professional and is messaging maybe like once a week, like, hey, look at this design that I did. You're not over pushing it, but you're just stating that you're here, you're available, and you're ready if they need you.
I'm sure we have questions from the audience for these guys. Anybody out there? I think we probably have mics that are, yep.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Jordan EB, entertainment business. The question I have is,
You guys are all part of an industry that is now more established than it was, but is still kind of in the Wild West. Can you guys talk about what you see as the biggest opportunities within the industry, esports specifically, and then what are the biggest pitfalls that you might see coming down the turnpike in 5-10 years?
That's a very good question. I was actually talking to Steven and another individual. I think agencies are in a really cool spot right now. So esports organizations have been around for 10 years. I feel like eUnited got in at a really good time. We're 4 years old, kind of like at the tail end of organizations that are relevant and growing. Everyone else that's kind of getting in right now, they're doing well, but it's really hard to make a staple unless you have a lot of money. Esports agencies just started, about, I'd say, a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, and they're representing Ninja, Courage, multiple streamers, and think about like the pipeline of talent now with the high school communities finally showing interest in esports, and you have Full Sail and other collegiate universities having full ride scholarships. There's so much untapped talent out there now where you're really going to start to see like these players are going to make a statement. They're going to need someone that's going to represent them in their best interest, and you'll be having those talks with me, and I'll be fighting for the best interest of eUnited while the agent's looking on the best interest of the player, and we always come to a common ground. But I think that part of the industry is very lucrative and has a lot of capabilities to grow.
Yeah, I think piggybacking on that, data and analytics related to the recruiting is a big field, and it's growing. Right now, it's extremely young because not a lot of publishers necessarily make that data available, but I can tell you that it's coming. So we work with several publishers, several that just aren't yet there, but once they get there, you're going to have the stats geeks that are going to come along, and the idea of sabermetrics and Moneyball, that's all coming to esports. So being a part of that recruiting process, being a part of that data process, I think that that's going to be a really big industry in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, to me, there's two things that are kind of wildly unknown right now, and that's the organization side of, on the collegiate space, where you compete. Because like right now, individual kind of leagues are popping up, and sometimes a title is being played in more than one place, so we have to make a choice. Are we going to play this, with CSL? Are we going to play with NACE? And, those kind of things, I think that's going to change a lot before places kind of solidify themselves as like the place to play a particular title. So that's something that's a kind of an unknown right now. And, oh man, what was the other one? I had another one. I can't remember the other one now.
I just thought of another one, so I'll say that while you think about it.
Yeah.
This is going to be an unsexy pick, but sales. If you can do sales and you can do marketing, if there's one thing a lot of esports doing or aren't doing right now, it's actually making money. Like, generating revenue has been a slog for this industry. So if you can position yourself to be able to find those sponsorships, to find those advertising opportunities, you're going to be the hero of the entire brand.
I remembered the other one. It's what titles are going to be. Like we have new games coming out all the time. So like, we don't know next year what's going to be the new hot title. Is something going to jump in and be, I have to constantly be thinking, do I need to prepare for, like, we don't have an Apex team right now. Is that something we want to get into?
Yes.
What's the new title?
And to further echo on that, your question about what could be catastrophic to the industry, I forgot to answer that. I'm still trying to figure out like the franchise model and how sustainable that is. I really like the concept, and having a home, crowd supporting your team is awesome. But even just having numerous talks with esport bars and locations, and creating stadiums when there's already sport stadiums available for one weekend of a Call of Duty or OWL homestand, it's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. And I think 5 years from now, we're really going to see a sense of what's working and what isn't. Because to Jameson's point, there's a new game that comes out every month, and some can have League of Legends and Call of Duty sustainability where they create that 10-year foundation, and then they're good for a franchise model. They've seen that, and it could potentially work out. But in other cases, you have a new game that comes out. If all the pro players that aren't finding success in their game, they're instantly going to go to that new game, and they're going to try to be the hot commodity of that title. And I think that's kind of what is awesome about our industry and scary at the same time.
Yeah, adding to the catastrophic side of things, I think one of the biggest threats to esports may actually be the publishers themselves. And not intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, but this is the Wild West for them too. And it's such a different landscape because you think about soccer and football. Nobody owns soccer. Nobody owns football. So these publishers have to juggle so many things around IP and rights and who can run tournaments, who can't run tournaments. So I expect that we're going to see some stumbles there. We've already seen some, but hopefully the publishers, when they get it all together, they realize that the ecosystem is more powerful, including all of these community aspects and community elements, and they don't push things off too far.
That's where I geek out, is over the legal stuff, but we'll save that one for another day. I saw a couple questions over here, I think. There's a mic. All I see is blue.
All right. What's up, guys?
Hey.
I was wondering, first of all, my name is Gus. I'm currently in sportscasting. I was wondering about more grassroots esports, because esports organizations, I own one at the moment, and we don't exactly have too many opportunities to make money, in a sense. Like there are the players such as Sam Sora, who, is at the upper echelon, is always going to be in that top 8 prize pool. But what do we do with the other players? How do we essentially try to generate revenue off of them? Not off of them, of course,
yeah,
but
of
also
course.
like help them out as much as they can without being at a loss.
So sponsors that we attract, along with other organizations, we're looking at like a national level. If we have teams that, some organizations such as like G2 and Liquid, they might have teams residing in Europe and NA, so they're able to obtain international sponsors. For us, we're only focused on national sponsors. So maybe for your case, you should try to focus more on local sponsorship and stating like, hey, this is the best player in this area. He's not as big as these guys, but he has an opportunity to do some damage and get your name out. And the price point for them should be cheaper and easier compared to another organization. That would be my best advice, to try to at least get some revenue coming in. So if you are talking to an investor or talking to a potential partner, you can state that you do have some revenue already coming in from local sponsorships and you're just looking for that investment to take you to the next level.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, especially if you happen to have a team that your players are fairly local. Local sponsorships are the low-hanging piece of fruit that most people forget. You know, they think, I'm going to start an esports team and immediately Alienware is going to give me a sponsorship. But the reality is that there are softball teams that are getting sponsored today, right? You know, so go to Joe's Grill. Promise them that you're going to mention their name on the stream and your guys are going to come out and you're going to eat there once every couple weeks. That's a great place to start. And just having one sponsor attracts other sponsors. So find that low-hanging fruit for you, even if it's somebody local. Heck, even if it's family connected, you know, find somebody that can get you that first sponsorship. Because not only is it good for the other sponsors to come along to see you already have a sponsor, it's good for you because you learn what the sponsorship process is like. As if you haven't sold a sponsorship before and I say, yes, I'm interested, and again, you reply back and say, okay, well, please just sponsor me. Well, you're not going to get the sponsorship. But if you send me a sales sheet based on what you did for Joe's Grill, great, I'm looking.
Oh, I was going to add on to that too. Viral content, just trying to think of something. Obviously, social media is our best friend. So just taking the time, like an hour a day, to think about what could go viral, and, you know, having a jersey for your esports organization with those sponsors attached to it. I mean, anyone, even with 10 followers, could turn into a $1 million, video. So just a thought.
I saw more hands up here. Don Tony has one. I can see him.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Hi, it's Tracy.
I
back
can't
here.
see you, Tracy. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm in front of house. I have a question from eUnited for Burns. Your team is saying, can you please extend your vacation a few extra days? They're having too much fun.
Yes, I can surely do that. I know they're all watching right now. And what's up, guys? Hope you're enjoying your work day.
We just need a little giggle in the room. Back to you guys. Sorry, Don Tony.
Hi guys, I'm Tony. I'm in sports marketing and media, and I actually have a question for Shawn. Have you ever run into any issues with like game developers with your software? I think a good example is like Visor with Overwatch. They were kind of tracking stats and whatnot, and then Blizzard completely banned them, saying that it was a cheating software and whatnot. So have you ever run into any issues like that with your software?
Yeah, great question. So from the start, we've said we want to work with the publishers, we want to work with the developers. We don't want to do anything that is, if not illegal, highly frowned upon. There are a lot of ways to get stats that involve listening in on netcode, basically diving in and scraping other people's sites and things like that. And so we stay away from all of that because, to your point, the publisher or developer can come along and instantly just say, you're out. So we do our best to make sure that we do play within those rules. And for the developers and publishers that we've been working with, for the most part, what they're concerned about the most is obviously that you're preserving the integrity of their game. So with Visor, they saw that as a conflict because it was you giving somebody an advantage over somebody else, and that's going to quickly get shut down. But if you're enhancing their product by providing data that already existed in a unique way, or showing a new use case that helps deepen the experience, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to want to work with you as opposed to shut you down. But if you are going to, start scraping sites or try to do things behind back doors, the first thing they're going to do is send you a cease and desist. So you always have to make sure that you're being respectful, you're playing within their rules, and if you got anything that's even borderline, send them a message. Usually they're pretty quick about responding to give you a clarification or even give you a blessing to go ahead and keep trying.
More questions? I know I saw more hands. There's one in the front, one back here.
Hello.
Hi.
So for single-player games, such as Smash, for example, that you guys have Sora, if Sora wins events often, how does the split of the money work between you guys and Sora?
So specifically, I can't answer it for Sora, but in general, throughout all of our teams, we negotiate what's in the best interest of them and the company alike. Every player and team is different depending on what their salary levels are. Sometimes if we're providing them a higher salary, we'll take more from the prize pool. If it's a strategic deal where the player is kind of betting more on themselves, they'll take more of the prize pool and we'll give them a lower salary point. But yeah, Sora, he's been substantial for our organization. We love him. He's an anchor for our brand right now, and we're just really excited for his growth. He's gone from 30,000 followers to 100,000 followers, and just shout out to Sora. Great guy, and really excited to see him keep killing it.
There's one down here. Oh, they're back there.
Hi, I'm Bill. I'm doing the Game Design Masters here at Full Sail, and I had a question around the data-driven process of sabermetrics, so this might be best geared towards Shawn. Just curious what sort of skill set or set of skills to work in order to get into this sort of realm of exciting new ways to analyze the play field itself.
Well, yeah, data science itself is a whole sort of field now, and usually a lot of the applications aren't necessarily meant for gaming, but they apply to gaming. So data science itself is a great field, but usually that just involves a strong math background, a strong analytical background, because what you're effectively doing is looking at giant spreadsheets of numbers and looking for correlations. So it's truly fascinating if you're really into it. It's horrifying if you're not. I fall right in the middle, so I've got my data team that does most of the heavy lifting in the back end. But I'd say that if you are really into math, that's the number one priority, because you're going to be spending a lot of time doing average calculations, differentials, and all that fun stuff.
What in the world is that? Yeah, no. More questions. We probably have time for one more, and then I'm about to cut you off.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and my talk is for Burns. My question's for Burns. I know you touched a little bit on agencies, but how do you feel about the rise of player associations in esports?
I think it's really needed. I think it's great that players are finally coming together and creating some sense of an environment where they're looking out for each other. I know Scoots, I believe, did it for Counter-Strike first. He created the Counter-Strike Association, Player Association, and I'm hoping to see that replicated into more environments and ecosystems throughout titles, but there's some players that just look out for themselves sometimes, and they're killing it in terms of how much they're making. So maybe they don't want to share how much they're making, or maybe they don't want to share the same resources and capabilities that they currently have. But I'm a big fan of it, and you're gonna obviously it's gonna continue to grow, and it's gonna continue to be a relevant aspect for the next 5 years or so.
We have unfortunately run out of time, and I say unfortunately because I think we could go for another hour or two. These guys were awesome, weren't they?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys all for joining us, Jameson, Shawn, and Burns. Thank you guys.
Thank you,
We're
everybody.
out.
Thanks, everybody.